the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all this, sir.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
Listen to all this, sir.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I said I've never seen such hideousness in all my life.
That is Lord, they say.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's be at it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 292. Do feminists always project? I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with nonsense annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson, and tonight we're diving into yet another feminine cesspool. This is going to be a heck of a show, guys, or a heck of a discussion at least, because this is a rough story, and it's quite a situation. So, but first, before we get into that, we got to do what we got to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthatip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the Thought Police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. So, just looking at this one's a little different in terms of, like, we don't usually just get into a news story and go from article to article, but I'm going to do that tonight because at first glance, when I first saw, there was a post about this on Facebook, or on, not Facebook, on Twitter, and it just looked like the woman in question had coincidentally posted on this "Are We Dating the Same Guy" page, and there's actually quite a bit more than that going on here. So this is I originally saw a screenshot of this story, and I had to research the headline and the author's name, or the publication name, one or the other, I can't remember which, to actually find this story. So the police report says, woman arrested over husband's murder appeared on Are We Dating the Same Guy page. So for context, Are We Dating the Same Guy is a Facebook group, and in it, women who suspect they are being cheated on post the information of the guys they are dating on that page, so that other women who suspect they're being cheated on might be able to find them on that page. So it is...
Is this the page that resulted in some guy getting murdered?
Yes. Well, it's not. It's worse than that. The page didn't result in it, but when you think about this, this is something Lauren brought up in the chat, so I'm going to let Lauren go on this. But it's basically a database, even though it's a Facebook group. It's a database of cheating suspects, right? And just cheating suspects. So none of these guys are known for a fact to be cheating. It's women who suspect their male partner is cheating post their image on this page. That's it. That's the whole thing.
To be clear, cheating is not illegal. Okay, it's dirty.
Not yet.
But he's not breaking any law. He broke your little heart. And as callous as that sounds, look at what happens when this chick decides she wants to get revenge.
Yeah.
This guy ends up dead.
Yeah. And then it gets worse. The whole thing, the whole story gets worse. So,
but when women have multiple partners, they get stigmatized. But when men have multiple partners, they get murdered. Oh shit! Oh, there goes the narrative.
Yeah, I want to remind everybody, back in the day, and this is old. Okay, A Voice for Men used to have a database of women whose allegations had been, whose allegations to police had been deemed false by either the police dropping the case, or the woman dropping the case, or the court finding the guy innocent. The vexatious litigant from the 7 Years in Hell story was on that database. I put her on that database. Like, I did not see anything wrong with that. I don't think that maintaining a database like that is necessarily a problem, as long as there is some evidence like that where they've made an allegation to police and then they've taken it back, or the police have said there's no evidence here, or the court has said, oh, that's not true, right? Because that's something that, if a guy is convicted of an allegation, he goes on a list, and it doesn't matter if he goes to jail and he does his time and does his full time, gets out and is deemed rehabilitated, goes to therapy and is deemed rehabilitated, he's still on that list. That list is not, you don't get off that list by being no longer a criminal. You don't get off that list by graduating from the therapy that the state has for you to make you not a sex offender anymore, right? So if we're going to have that kind of lifelong condemnation for people, even though we demand that they be capable of rehabilitation, then I don't see a problem with also tracking people who lie about somebody being that bad, so that the next time they go to the police, the next time they try to file a case against another guy, or even the same guy, the cops have something they can look at and say, well, this woman has lied about 4 other guys. Maybe we should question her a little harder than we would somebody else. Her credibility is lower than the standard, and I think that's fair. Same thing as, if we're going to do that to sex offenders, why not fraudsters? And why not have that list be public?
Right. And you know what ends up happening? I came across this video on YouTube the other day. This guy goes to towns that have like interesting backstories, and so he went to this one town where like most, if not all, of the residents there were registered sex offenders. Some, obviously who did worse things and really didn't want to talk about it. But this is what happens to them. They have to go and live somewhere because they have this thing that they can't get rid of. They can't get that monkey off their back. This doesn't happen to women who lie about men. They get celebrated and applauded and, made excuses for by the other women around them. So, it makes them feel justified in what they do.
And I want to point some other things out, too. Being on a sex offender list, you don't just have your name on a list that is accessible to police and authorities. People can find out, like there's databases online that you can search to find out if there's a sex offender living in your neighborhood. There are some living in my neighborhood.
Right?
Like if I walk to the grocery store, I walk past a sex offender's house. And
people are generally warned about
Right.
sex offenders in their neighborhood, especially if they're next door to them.
What's really bad is I only know that I'm walking past the home of a misdemeanor sex offender. So I don't know if the guy flashed somebody, groped somebody, or got caught taking a leak after he got drunk one night and decided to go in the alley behind the bar when the bar was closed and he couldn't get back into the restroom. Because all 3 of those things are misdemeanors. And here's the thing. I gotta make a comparison here, all right? All right, misdemeanor. If you get into a bar fight, right? You go into a bar, you get too drunk, and you slug somebody in the jaw, and they hit you back. And it's definitely mutual. You don't damage anything. You just have this fight, and somebody calls the cops, and by the time the cops get there, you're not fighting anymore. It's over. Nobody's going to press charges against the other person. The cop will charge you with disorderly conduct, because that's disorderly conduct. And you will be ordered to go to court. You don't actually go to jail for that. You just go to court, unless you're still drunk, and then they might go drunk and disorderly. But disorderly conduct is a misdemeanor. And if you get convicted, it still isn't permanent on your record. It's just you get a penalty, and then it just sort of drops after a period of time. But not if it's a sex offense, right? That stays on your record, and you go on that list, and you end up with people in your neighborhood knowing that you're on a sex offender list, for a level of sex offense that could be a type of imposition on another person, or it could be something that nobody used to care about, but now they do.
Yeah, it's not good enough to shout law and order. Yeah,
Right.
it should be to just scream law and order as though it's good enough for law and order to be actually exacted on anything that we might call quote unquote equality, but more often than not, law and order is only exacted on those who the government wishes it to be exacted on, and it's completely ignored on the other side.
Yeah.
And this is why we do what we do. We try to uphold law and order, but if the law is only being upheld on one side, then it's not good enough. Someone needs to be here to speak up for the people for whom law and order is not being enforced on the behalf of, or however you rephrase that sentence, so as to not end it with a preposition.
Well, basically, people who are not the beneficiaries of the enforcement of the law. Basically, when a man does something, it's enforced. When a woman does something, it's not always. And when a man does something and it's enforced as much as it can be. When a woman does something, sometimes the man gets blamed, and often she doesn't get any kind of penalty, and nothing is done that would help him use the system that is set up for victims either. So there you go.
We appreciate all of you who are lawful good, or lawful neutral, or even chaotic, or lawful chaotic.
Chaotic good.
Chaotic good. There's stuff you're missing out on. And that's sometimes the law is wrong. Sometimes the law is wrong. I know that's difficult to understand, but it is possible for the law to become chaotic, or not even chaotic. It's just skewed in one particular direction, and that is men have to suffer for the sake of women. And at that point, all of those D&D accumulations to make no sense whatever. Although, unless you agree with certain interpretations of the law in which that women represent chaos and men represent order, and in that case, you have to look into to what degree that those things are being imposed equally, and that's when we have to start talking about equality. I know a lot of us are like, fuck equality, it's a broken concept, but
well,
it's because the law and the politicians attempting to exact the law are themselves broken, and none of this matters anymore. And this is why we talk about men's rights versus women's rights, because when men's rights are broken and women's rights are ironclad, we have to go, let's look into these things a little bit more deeply, because it's not just a lawful good and lawful evil. It's the system can be broken, and it is broken, and it has been broken for a long ass time.
Yeah, the friend from Northwest Ohio that I've talked about that was convicted of assault for stopping a woman's second attempt at stabbing him in the throat with a pencil, was asked if he had anything to say to the court, and a judge threatened to hold him in contempt for saying the system was broken, because a man could be convicted of a crime for stopping a woman from trying to kill him. And
not to mention his third hand.
Yeah. Well, that's a different guy. And actually, that's a sad story, because after that situation, he completely lost his mind.
And apparently, women have no hands. None at all.
No, none. Women's hands aren't real, and if you say otherwise, it's misogyny. But yeah, if you want to go with like concepts of good and evil, people will twist those. So I look at intentions instead, and I don't look at it in terms of moral judgments, good or evil. I look at it in terms of whether you intend to do help to another person, whether your intentions are altruistic, whether you intend to do harm to another person, so your intentions are malicious, whether your intention is just in regard to yourself without consideration or concern about others, so that's more selfishness. And I don't like the crossbar that, like, the D&D concept is great for the game. It helps you decide your character's actions in the game, but a lot of comparisons to real life, it gets screwed up because we really act on a three-dimensional. You'd have to have, instead of just north, south, east, and west, you'd have to have north, south, east, west, up, and down. And possibly some other directions as well. Because you have that, from altruism to malice, from, totally cooperative to totally selfish, and then you also have between authoritarian and libertarian. So there's really 6 points of contention between people where their moral outlook falls, and you can't put that on a two-dimensional graph. So, for me, I'm much more libertarian, like to the point of being, anarchist. So I guess it really would be from communal to anarchist, I suppose. From communal and authoritarian to anarchist. But basically, you see what I mean. It's a lot more complicated than you would want to try to keep track of in a game. You wouldn't want to spend your whole time in the game paying attention to just that. You'd never get to kill the dragon. You have to get pretty high level to even be able to fight dragons. Unless you go after babies. Even babies
dragons have rights too.
Yeah. Well, some of them are good. So if you fight them, you're nasty. But in any case, when it comes down to law and law enforcement and the idea of equality, when you look at that spectrum, it's easy for people to twist the meaning of the term equality. But for purposes of fairness within a civilization, there is only one thing that the government should be doing in regard to equality, and that is that the government shouldn't treat people differently depending on their demographic. That's it. Not trying to equalize things within society because people are born into different situations, not trying to right historical wrongs between groups of people, because there is not a single innocent group in the history of humankind, and there is not a single group in the history of humankind that is uniquely guilty. Right? There may be individuals who have done egregious things within different groups that are definitely more guilty than the rest of the individuals within their group or the group that they targeted at that time and so on. But governments can't fix all of that by discriminating against people. So when feminists argue that women deserve a set of rights that comes at the expense of discriminating against men now on the basis of allegations of historical discrimination against women by men, then what they're really arguing for isn't equality. It's revenge. And
Reparations.
right, and here's the thing, right? Why do we make fun of the Hatfields and the McCoys? What's funny about a years-long feud in which multiple people died, and the feud had to be ended by the execution of individuals who were some of the last ones to commit crimes by the state, right? What's funny about that? Right? And the funny thing is, the thing that people laugh about is the stupidity of getting revenge on someone who did nothing wrong because you're mad at somebody for something they did. And having that just continue back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for years and years. Right? That's what people make fun of. Like, you idiot, guy A did something stupid and wrong, and you escalated, but you didn't just escalate, you escalated against somebody who wasn't involved, just because they're related. And then they're escalating against somebody else who wasn't involved, just because they're related to you. And that's essentially all of humanity doing that with this discrimination within government. And so when we have laws that apply only to men, or that are enforced only against men, or mostly against men, or more against men than against women, because of historical allegations of discrimination, what we are doing is turning our government into the Hatfields and the McCoys, right? Using our government to turn men and women into the Hatfields and the McCoys. And so it is, in this particular story, it is pertinent to the story in that when we look at the Facebook page that's being talked about here, which we're not actually going to go to that Facebook page because there's men's information published on that page, and it's not taken down. It's still there. But and I'm not going to expose their information. I'm just going to talk about the page. And from what I've seen, and it's women go there. It runs a lot like any other Facebook group where your post bumps all the other posts before it down. But women will go there and they'll post a picture of the guy that they're disparaging. They'll post his full name. They'll post his area of residence. They're not posting street addresses and stuff like that, but they are letting people know the sphere of social interaction where the guy might be dating and so on. And you might have multiple women post the same guy. You might not. You might have one woman post the guy, and then women just talk about him. And sometimes they say some nasty shit about, like, nobody's going to cheat on you with that guy because he looks like a piece of shit. Or, oh, of course guys that do the kind of, they'll post what kind of job he does. They'll post that kind of course, this kind of profession, these guys cheat all the time, or guys being arrogant, or he thinks he can get away with it because look at that car, just totally unrelated, presuming him guilty and all that. It's a toxic place. Just saying.
As much as I enjoy this emergent argument between the merits of democracy and the merits of monarchy, I both sides of this argument keep saying, well, at some point you might get a total tyrannical dictator who completely fucks up the country, and both sides of this will say, well, at some point you'll get a totally non-benevolent dictator who will ruin the country, and the democratists, if that's even a word, will say you can't have a monarchy because at some point you'll be under the thumb of a singular dictator. And the monarchists, in the same breath, will say, yeah, well, democracy will inevitably bring something even worse than a king, because a democratically elected government will give itself license to do anything on account of they think they've been elected by the people, when really they haven't. We've seen more than enough evidence over the last few years that democracy can be even more corrupted than monarchy. And at the same time, yes, you can get a tyrannical king, and you kind of have to take that risk that you might get a benevolent king or a tyrannical king, but you're more likely to get a benevolent king than you are to get a benevolent democratically elected government, and that's very true. It seems the longer the longer you allow a democratic government to exist, the closer you get to the inevitability that you'll get a tyrannical government, and it's an even greater risk than the idea of a monarchy. But in either case, if you let either a monarchistic government or a democratic government capitulate to the human nature of, dare I say, gynocentrism, in either case, you're likely to get someone who just doesn't give a shit about men's rights. And yes, I'm going to call it men's rights, because in either case, it is the risk. Whether you're capitulating to human nature or democratic nature, you're likely to get someone who just reverts back to their nature to protect women at the expense of men. And so in either case, someone needs to be there to say, hey, make sure you don't waste men's lives for the sake of women's protection. Like, on either side of this argument, someone needs to be making this case.
Yeah.
And this is why we make this case. Like, I'm not sure which is better. Like, I don't want to say we need a king or indeed an emperor who can do whatever they like, because there's a very good possibility that they will revert to their human nature to protect women at the expense of men. But it's not as though democracy is going to fix this problem.
That's why I oppose all forms of government.
Yeah.
Like, there isn't a form of government that lacks the flaw that it can become tyrannical when left unchecked by the will of the people. And the will of the people can become tyrannical if a large number of people can be conned into thinking of tyrannical ideas as benevolent. And that has happened throughout history as well. So it's like, in a situation like this, like, say there was no authority in power. There was no law enforcement. It was just you protect yourself, or groups of people protect themselves, band together to protect themselves, and so on. There would be no I'm not gonna say there would be no harm, but there would be no violation of anybody in having a site where people make allegations on the site. The site would have no credibility, and people who were on the site wouldn't be able to get in trouble for, say, sabotaging it or maintaining a site of their own where they track the people who post to the other site. You would find out that people had equal capability of aiming their speech at each other in this manner. But in our situation, in real life, in a world with governments where things that are considered bad when men do them under the law and by the people upholding the policies that are written by agencies intending to enforce the law, like they don't see the same things as equally bad when women do them, because they're not viewed as an equal threat when women do them. Well, this woman killed a man. And she killed him for more than just her suspicion of cheating. There was more wrong here than people realize. But before we start reading the text of the story, there's a super chow I want to read from Meredith G. She gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 292, Honey for the Badgers, do feminists project? Yes. Give so many exhibit what can be seen as aspects of NPD, or narcissistic personality disorder. Projection is a given. And then Senior Sticks gave us $10 in a super chat and said, the government will be fair when Western women collectively have to sign up for the draft and petition the government to do their job and stop screwing over the citizenship. Hannah and company. Yeah, that's the thing. People keep saying, well, feminism just went overboard. Equality was achieved. No, equality has not been achieved. Feminists never fought for equality. Okay? They looked at the spectrum of rights, obligations, limitations, and restrictions, and responsibilities that both sexes had. And they didn't like the limitations and restrictions that applied to women, so that men could meet their obligations to women under the law and uphold their responsibilities for women under the law. And they demanded that those limitations and restrictions be lifted. They looked at the rights that men were given as a function of those responsibilities and those obligations. Yes, you have the right to do these things so that you can take care of your family. And they demanded those same rights without taking up the obligations that men are facing, that men have to meet in order to justify having those rights. And among those was men are under the obligation of their country to be prepared for their government to say, we're going to yank you out of your whole life, your job, your family, all of your collective pastimes. If you got a garden, well, fuck it, you're not going to be able to do anything about that now, right? If you got a farm, you better hope somebody can take it over for you or it's going under. And then we're going to send you overseas to fight in a foreign war. And if you die, well, sorry, not sorry. We might pay your family a little bit of money and you'll have a nice headstone in a cemetery that people can look at and say, look at this great memorial to all the people who fought for our freedom by killing people in another country who actually weren't coming here and attacking anybody. Right? That's basically men's obligation, and it is in trade for their voting rights. It is in trade for a whole host of things. Men had to in World War I, men had to fight. In World War II, men had to fight in order to expand those voting rights. And before feminists come out and say there's not a law that says men who don't sign up for the draft today can't vote, doesn't matter. Because there have been multiple instances, even in the United States during history, where the government has said, okay, ethnic group A, you can win your people's right to vote by joining our country's war. They did it to Filipino men. They did it to Native American men. They did it to Chinese men. Right? They've talked about doing it to immigrants who have come across the southern border and are applying for amnesty now. And before anybody goes, those damn liberals repeat the same thing over and over again, it was Republicans who brought that up during the Obama administration. So this is not a one-sided thing. Both sides have done that. Equality has never been achieved. Women have never been held equally accountable under the law. In Western law, women have not faced equal obligation to men under the law. Women are not viewed as equally culpable for their actions under the law. So and women receive more compassion under the law as well. So if somebody victimizes a woman versus victimizing a man, they will face a harsher punishment, and systems that are set up for victims to help victims with financial problems or any other type of recovery from being a victim of a violent crime. Women receive benefits from those more than men do. They're more sympathetic to women. Poverty is another area. Our system is set up to be more sympathetic to women living in poverty than men living in poverty. So this is like, even people who are looking at feminism from the perspective that it was ever about equality, who say, well, equality was achieved and then feminism kept going. No, feminists never fought for equality. They only fought for advancement for women in ways that would continue the feminist grift.
If you leave men to their own devices, they will defend their own homeland, no matter how big it is, no matter how small it is, whatever they consider to be their nation, they will fight for. It goes to show you that nations like Luxembourg and Liechtenstein and Andorra still exist. These micro nations all across Europe still exist. Is a testament to the idea that it is perfectly possible for men to get together and defend their territory, no matter how small it is. They can do it. Like, even if Russia invades, they'll have to invade one nation and then another nation. But then when they come to a nation that exists on a mountaintop where they have the high ground, they'll be able to defend it. And this is why so many micronations have existed for so long. It's a testament to how many micronations have existed for so long. We don't necessarily have to conglomerate into one greater nation, and it's a testament that we don't need to become a globalist nation in order to achieve peace. In fact, the more we try to conglomerate into a globalist nation, the more we'll descend into World War III. because nations will get together and all be under the impression that we can unite the world under one globalist government, and nothing could be further from the truth. Even if the world was one world government, there will still be fights among the regions of that government, but they will all be murdered by these globalist governments, and then the rest of the world will never know about it, because the first thing globalist powers control is the media.
Yeah.
And they'll suppress any information of how these what they call fascist nations are needlessly pushing back on the struggle towards globalism. As if you just let people be, if you just leave people to their own devices, they're perfectly capable of handling their own localized communities. And I don't say this as some kind of nationalist. It's perfectly possible for very small amounts of people to be independently in control of their own small amount of land. And yes, that means it's possible for there to be, there's only 190 something nations at the moment. But yeah, if we break all that shit up, there could be thousands of different nations across the world. What exactly would be the problem with that? I mean, yeah, you all hate Russia because it's so massive. But if you break Russia up into a bunch of tiny nations, then they'll be fine. Just as fine as all the tiny nations into which Europe has been broken up. All the tiny nations into which the USA has been broken up. We call them states.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess the federal USA government is a lot more stable than the proposed federal government that some people like to call the EU, but that's not the same case at all, because Europe has been a bunch of different nations for thousands of years at this point, and that's the reason the EU has not taken off as much as the federal United States has taken off. But even the US could exist as independent states. All of these attempted conglomerates could exist as separate states, and that would not make war more likely. It would make war less likely, because everyone is composed of smaller states. And yes, you could say that we'd be at the mercy of larger states, and this is why we're all in this case of uncertainty, because there are such bigger nations. But the answer is not to conglomerate everything into one big state, because you're never going to conglomerate everything into one globalist state. China's always going to be there, certainly as long as it's under this particular thing. So if you're gonna do anything, it should be splitting up all of these conglomerate states into smaller states. That would be far preferable to, like I say, conglomerating everything into larger and larger states, because because that gets to the 1984 point where there's Oceania and East Asia and whatever the other one was. If there's nothing left but three massive states, then that's only going to involve a world war the likes of which you could not possibly imagine. Which not only should we be breaking countries up into smaller counties or whatever, that if everyone did that instantaneously, that would be the most efficient protection against world wars than it possibly could be.
Well, you'd also have. I say this about schools, right? Nobody is more dedicated to your child's education than you are. No government, no neighbors, no nothing. Nobody is more dedicated to the overall education of the kids of a community than the local community, the businesses, the people who those kids are going to be serving as they get older and start their own businesses and so on. So when you federalize it, what you do is you put people who have less interest in the outcome of the people involved directly than their local community. Well, that's true with everything that government does. And but I'm going to cut that short because we'll never get to the story. And I do want to get to the story. The story itself is largely a result of feminist narratives about men. And, it's this woman's behavior and who she is and what she is slipped through the cracks because of that. So something that is viewed as stalking and malicious and a warning sign, a red flag when a man does it, didn't create a red flag, didn't lead to any, anybody saying, hey, something's wrong here when a woman did it. I will read. We have a super chow from Richard Bier, who gave us $5 and said, Have you ever seen the Powerpuff Girls episode where they confront the feminist bank robber who demands that the bank hand over only Susan B. Anthony dollars and convinces the girls to keep letting her go because feminism/women reasons? Miss Bellum sets them straight on the history, which leads the girls to bring the robber in. Yeah, I remember that episode, and yeah, I was kind of cheering for that. And we also got a Rumble rant. NovaFan 21 gave us $1 and said, I don't recall any wave of feminism ever saying, we have enough equality, we can stop now. It was always more, more, more. And yeah, that is true as well. So, the Law Enforcement Today article, police, women arrested over husband's murder, appeared on Are We Dating the Same Guy page. And I have this because I want to point out about the entry. So this happened in Virginia Beach. 30-year-old woman out of Virginia Beach was arrested in mid-July after authorities said she fatally shot her husband following a domestic dispute while the couple were in the midst of an ongoing divorce. Reports further show the suspect had recently posted about her now-late husband in a Facebook group titled Are We Dating the Same Guy? Mere days before the killing. And then we end up with a description of the police experience there.
It only took a couple of days for this whole thing to transpire.
Yeah, only took a couple of days.
Good God.
And prior to that, she hit him. According to the authorities, Wang and his wife, the guy's name was Calvin Wang. So Wang and his wife, Christina, had allegedly gotten into some sort of verbal spat at the home on July 15th, during which Christina reportedly slapped Wang. Following the battery incident, Wang reportedly told Christina to leave the home, though police say Christina opted to retrieve a firearm instead and shoot her husband in the stomach and the head. So she gut shot him. And
did she shoot him in the wang? Sorry, somebody.
Well, she shot the guy named Wang.
They keep saying Wang, and I'm sat here expecting not to make a joke.
If you really want to go there, but honestly, that was what she was obsessed with. Court documents assert the entire incident was caught on video, and Christina also allegedly confessed to the murder. So there's no doubt. We're not talking about somebody who might be guilty but might not be guilty. This is it's already known and proved. This is already filing from the decedent's attorney regarding the divorce accused his wife of engaging in extramarital affairs, to which Christina's attorney at the time countered with a filing that claimed plaintiff has condoned defendant's adulterous acts, and thus plaintiff cannot use adultery as ground for divorce, which obviously he didn't. So that's real brief, right? Well, then you find out a man killed in Virginia Beach was an active duty sailor. So we look at this. We're looking at a story in which the wife is accusing the husband of cheating, but he filed divorce for her cheating, and she was cheating on an active duty soldier. He's a sailor. He's in the Navy. So officials with the U.S. Navy confirmed Calvin Wang most recently served as chief fire controlman. They sent the following statement on Thursday. This news story was published on July 20th, so the Thursday prior to July 20th. We're not watching the video, all right? On July 17th, 2023, Chief Fire Controlman Agus Calvin Wang, an active duty service member assigned to Surface Combat Systems Training Command, Detachment Middle Atlantic, was found deceased in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, coworkers during this time. The loss is felt personally by the people who served with him. and by our Navy as a whole. Each sailor is an invaluable part of our team, and he is sorely missed. Grief counseling services and support are available. And then it goes on to mention the police department. And that she is charged for his death. And then it mentions again, he had filed for divorce. He had cited his wife's affair with another man. And paperwork outlines conflicting accounts between attorneys. Christina's lawyer claims Calvin condoned the adulterous acts, which is a claim Calvin's lawyer denies. So what it sounds like is this woman is claiming that they had an open marriage. She was allowed to sleep with another man, right? And then he filed for divorce, told her to get out, and she put him on are we dating the same guy, and then killed him.
Does the story say whether or not she found out that he was cheating with someone else, or?
Nope. There's nothing in the story that indicates that he actually did anything to anyone. So the progression of events is they were married, she cheated, he called her on it, he filed for divorce, she tells the court that they had an open relationship, that he condoned her adultery, right? But he obviously didn't feel that way about it because he filed for divorce and cited adultery. So what is her excuse? Well, this headline: Virginia Beach woman who admitted to killing her husband appears in court. Detectives said she snapped. She was so upset for apparently that he didn't condone her cheating that she snapped in the heat of the moment of the however long it took for them to get from I do to her cheating, him filing for divorce, and all this. And that long, years long moment, she snapped. I want you to think about this story from a different perspective, all right? Imagine for a minute. Imagine a marriage where the man is the one who is accused of cheating. The woman has filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. He is telling the court, but we had an open marriage. I was allowed to sleep with other women. She was okay with it. And she's going, no, I wasn't, Your Honor. I was not okay with that. He was cheating on me. Right? And then he put her on a stalker page to let other guys know that she was his and they shouldn't touch her 2 days before killing her. Imagine what feminists would say about this story. Just for a minute. If a man did this, if a man was that possessive after cheating, this would be bigger. This would be a bigger story than the all of the stuff that we've had thrown at us over the years. The Elliot Rodger story, the Brock Turner story, the Steubenville story. All of the guys that are accused of quote-unquote incel killings, all of the incidents where they accuse husbands of having nefarious reasons for anything that they do to their wives. Nope, this guy would be the Satan of men, right? Because he was obviously engaging in coercive control, and then he killed her.
And this is one of those situations where the same word, snapped, would be incriminating if a man did it, but an excuse if a woman did it.
Mm-hmm.
Snapped. He just snaps and killed her. Well, he doesn't get to snap and kill her. But if a woman does it, well, she just snapped.
Well, when a woman does it, what they do is they make a TV series named Snap. It's called Snap. And it's all about when women just snap and kill someone. So that's what we do when women do it. We put them on TV and make them famous.
Yeah. And
it's all, of course,
and excuse everything they did too.
Well, this is how it happened, and she was so stressed, and the single mother of 3. You know what I mean? It's always the woe is me. Sometimes you'll get one that's actually just, really psycho, and they don't even try to hide it. But just oh God. The disparity of how we treat men versus women when they do these things it's glaringly obvious.
Yep. So now we have a little more to add here. Right. The bit about her snapping, and before we get there, I'm gonna look at a little more in this story. So it says Christina Wang's attorney Roger Whitus said she struggles with her mental health and snapped on July 15th, which again, let's consider that from another perspective. If we were told that a man with mental health struggles, again, had made a possessive claim of ownership of his wife on a site that existed specifically for that purpose, because that is what Are We Dating the Same Guy is, right? That would be a red flag right there. That would be considered a red flag. And people would be talking about how that red flag was overlooked. Let's see. They had 2 kids, by the way. So a 6-year-old and oh, okay, no, I thought they had a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, but it's the 2 have a 6-year-old son together. I read that wrong. So they have a child. There's a 6-year-old kid, a little boy, who is out both parents now because his mom killed his father. But viewers sent 13 News now screenshots of Facebook posts written by Christina Wang. She wrote them on a local private group called Are We Dating the Same Guy? Which, by the way, they did figure out my Facebook alt was me and kicked me out a while back after I mentioned several of the posts and everything. They ID'd the... I hadn't posted anybody in there. I was just in the group. And they're like, well, this is obviously the mole. So they're paying attention, guys. But anyway, she posted a photo of his dating app profile. So she was mad because, all right, the relationship's over. He has told her the relationship's over. They are getting divorced. He has a dating app profile. And she posted that dating app profile and alerted other women he's married. Imagine, again, from a feminist perspective, is a guy in the midst of a divorce whose wife is leaving him for cheating allowed to say to other guys, hands off, she's married? So the night before she shot him, she went back to his home after posting on Facebook, that he was cheating on her by having a dating app in the midst of their divorce. She went to his home with a peace offering. They were obviously separated, but the two began arguing about Calvin using that dating app. She admitted to slapping him, knocking his glasses off, so she didn't just slap him, she bitch slapped him. When he told her to leave, she shot him. And she gut shot him, and then after he fell to the ground in pain, then she shot him in the head. I can't begin to emphasize how cruel it is to shoot somebody in the gut. Even just a moment of the level. You've been punched in the gut. Everybody has had something happen that's hit them in the gut.
From a gunshot, it is the slowest, most painful way to die.
Like anybody who's ever had the flu where you get cramping diarrhea should understand how painful, even if that's not what kills you, even if you get shot in the head a moment later, even if you die a moment later from something else, that you're going to die in pain. That is torture. Like that's, your body has very sensitive, very loud nerves in that area because of the vulnerability of those organs that are in that area.
Oh, because of the stomach acid.
Yeah, because of the stomach acids, yeah.
Oh God.
But I mean,
I didn't even think about that.
having something puncture anywhere in your gut, besides being incredibly dangerous, is very painful. Appendicitis pain can be crippling to where the person will have to be lifted and carried in order to get them into the hospital. When my uncle's appendix burst, my dad carried him into the hospital. He couldn't get anywhere. He had to be carried out to the car, and he had to be carried into the hospital because his body wouldn't let him move his legs. It was too painful. He couldn't do it. And there's a reason for that. It's life-threatening if you have an injury like that and you ignore it because you don't feel that level of pain or you don't think it's that bad. My husband has neuropathy, and in 2022, like when I talk about like the last 3 years have been a shit show in terms of every time I get done with an emergency, another one presents itself. I'm not kidding. So he had appendicitis and didn't know it because of the neuropathy. And it created a very dangerous situation. He could not feel the level of pain he should have felt in that situation. So he went to work for 3 weeks with an infected and swelling appendix. And it burst, and because the pain wasn't anywhere near approaching how bad it should have been for a burst appendix, he thought he just had some indigestion. And it necrotized, and it wrapped around the intestine, and it necrotized part of the intestine. It killed part of the intestine, and it caused an illness called peritonitis, which means you have an infection in your gut, your whole gut, the area around all of the organs in your gut, and ended up having to have an extensive 5-hour surgery to remove little bits. And the worst part is, I was familiar with this because of what happened to my uncle. It was worse with my uncle because he had to have his whole stomach removed, where my husband had a little bit of every organ removed. My uncle spent the rest of his life with his esophagus directly attached to the small intestine. So he ate like a bariatric patient, and he couldn't eat and drink at the same time and had pain for the rest of his life from this. And it's terrible pain. And the reason I understand about gut pain is because of my uncle's experience. And this is the uncle that struggled with drug addiction also for the rest of his life. Well, he was in pain for his whole life, and it was severe pain. It wasn't like, well, you can learn to live with this. It was like being punched in the gut over and over again all day, every day for the rest of your life. And and on one hand, it's a blessing that my husband didn't feel everything that happened to him, but on the other hand, everything that happened to him happened because he couldn't feel it. And it almost killed him. So I almost lost my husband in 2022. That was, again, to explain why it's so painful. Your body needs you to have that level of pain if you have a gut injury. Your body needs you to feel like a deathly fear, a sense of dread and suffering, and seek help immediately when there's that kind of injury to your gut. And that's what she did. She shot him where it was going to be the most painful place to be shot, the scariest and the emotional suffering that he would have. And if he had survived, he would have been at risk for peritonitis and sepsis and all kinds of other health problems, including some permanent ones that would interfere with his ability to take in nutrition and everything. So it wasn't just she shot center mass and she did what you normally do with a gun. She wanted to hurt this man. Pax Americana Stan asking if yes, we can see your messages. They're showing up, and they're showing up and also going to Restream. So that's an interesting thing, because I wasn't seeing Twitter messages, X messages on Restream previously, and now we are. So we do have a relevant super chow. Richard Bier says, I will have to do some research, but in many cases of military divorces, regardless of who files, the ex-wife would often be eligible for a portion of the service member's pension. Yes, that's true. And him being a chief petty officer would indicate that he had time in service to be approaching retirement. Yeah. 20 years, if I remember right, is what you put in. So if you enlist right out of high school at 18 years old, then some people are eligible for retirement then at 48. So there you go. That is a distinct possibility. What is this thing doing? Oh, it's reloading the page. Okay, so I have to go back to where we were here. But yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that about the gut shot, because that's actually a much more major point than people might think.
It really puts into perspective the difference between that and perhaps shooting your stepson in the side of the ear. Have you all seen that viral clip by now of that? I forget which southern state it was of that 60-something, 70-something-year-old man shooting his stepson in the. He pointed the gun. He pointed the gun at him and said, "I'm gonna blow this motherfucker's head off." And
yes, yeah.
Yeah, and he went, "If you blow my mother's head off, you'll go to jail for a long." There's so many things to talk about that clip. But most people were saying, if someone points a gun at your head, like, don't taunt them into shooting you.
Yeah, that is one point.
You all saw that clip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he pointed the gun right. The kid walked out of his room, and like, why the fuck would you walk out of the room to continue to taunt the guy?
There's no way.
At that point, I like, yeah, you don't do that. But once he did that, the guy I continued pointing the gun at his head and shot him, and grazed his ear, and you could see the blood sort of dripping out onto the floor because he did that.
It's possible that there's context to that would explain the act of walking out.
There
For
is.
instance,
that kid was a cross-dressing Discord.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, it would be normal to expect somebody to have a sense of self-preservation in the moment, but it is possible that they've had this argument and fighting and stuff, and the kid's been threatened over and over and over, and no threat has been carried out. That would make you not view the threat or take the threat seriously. And then there's other things. A person can make themselves non-intimidating. Like, we lived next door to a drug dealer when I lived up north, who had throat cancer, and because he was also a very unwise methodology type user. We'll just say, for example, he, to signal that he had stuff available for sale, he would have a bonfire in his backyard, but he couldn't just have a bonfire because we were in town. So he would put it in a trash barrel, a big metal trash barrel. And according to the local statutes, if you are cooking over a fire, it doesn't have to be in a grill or something. It can be in a trash barrel like that. and the fire department can't do anything about it. So he decided to dispose of some linoleum floor tiles by burning them in his trash pile. Totally filled the whole neighborhood with this bizarrely toxic, stinky smoke, and cooked over this fire, and ate the things he was cooking over this fire, in which the fuel was linoleum floor tiles. So, I mean, I'm not shocked that the guy had throat cancer. He probably had 27 other types of cancer that nobody knew about. But in any case, he used to regularly threaten, because we didn't stop having the family photography business and stop using the backyard as a portrait studio next door to his illegal business. And he was mad about the cameras. Right? He moved in next door to a family of photographers that had been there for a couple of decades as a family of photographers, and then got mad that we were photographers. And it would threaten to come into our house in the night and kill us all. But it's not scary when a short dime store, God, I can't think of his name, the comedian that used to yell, "Oh, oh!" That guy. He was buddies with Rodney Dangerfield. He always wore the type of hat that looked like a beret.
Bobcat Goldthwait.
No.
Damn it.
Sam Kinison.
Yes.
Why couldn't I think of his name? He used to be one of my favorite guys. Because he would tell you about women. But yeah, he was like the dime store Sam Kinison. Came up to my chest, would look up at you with his little stoma and his vocalizer, and say, "I'm going to come over to your house and kill you in the middle of the night." And we'd be like, we'd fake it back at him. "Okay, go ahead," and he would get mad. This is a serious threat. You're in real trouble now. And he couldn't. It's not intimidating. I'm sorry. And we should have taken it seriously, because, I mean, the man was a criminal, right? He had people come to his house that looked very dangerous. But it's hard sometimes in that situation to separate the things that make you not take a threat seriously. Especially when it's ongoing, and it's this situation continued for years before it ended, and to the degree that we ended up so annoyed with them that we fucked with them in various ways, and to try to annoy him into leaving. But in any case, so I don't necessarily want to suggest that the guy that didn't take the gun threat seriously was crazy or stupid for not taking it seriously. We don't know that was the first time that a gun was pointed at him in that home by this guy with no consequence, or that he had been had his life threatened with no chance of it being carried out. It could be that they fought like that so often that he was just accustomed to it and wasn't expecting. And the reality is that at any time, when somebody is pointing a gun at you, they can intentionally shoot you, or it can go off because they're being careless and crazy, and through no intention of their own, it can go off, and that's another possibility. But in any case, yeah. Similarly here, the husband in this situation, he probably knew his wife was nuts.
She had her pants down for no apparent reason at the beginning of the clip. No one's explained what the fuck that was about.
I don't know. They might have just got done searching her. Who knows?
No, in the viral clip.
Oh, in the viral clip. That's another. I don't know. Maybe apparently they were.
She had the hardest time trying to get those fucking pants up. I'm like, what is
when you
going
wear
on
pants
here?
that are like 3 sizes too small, you have that problem. especially if you're trying to put them up in a hurry after you've been interrupted or some shit like that. But yeah. In any case, in regard to the story at hand, the killing, that of the husband here, that situation, we don't know. You would think on one hand that you just don't tolerate a crazy person coming to your house to yell at you, but in a lot of domestic situations, the husband bends over backwards to tolerate the wife's behavior until she hurts him, because the guys don't expect the woman to be able to hurt him, and they don't expect her to bring a gun over for a makeup. It's not even makeup sex. It was just makeup lunch. Like that's so. But yeah, according to this, it happened on camera. She confessed to it. It's definitely proved that it happened. And we are talking about a story in which the order of events was, they get married, they're in their marriage, during their marriage, she had sex with another man, he filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, she tells the court that he condoned her sex with another man. So she's telling the court that either he was into it or they had an open marriage, right? And he's telling the court, no, that's not true. That has absolutely nothing to do with, why she did that, and is not real. And while they're divorcing, not in the midst of reconciliation, doesn't look like there's any chance of reconciliation. He starts using a dating app, and she puts his profile in, are we dating the same guy? And then goes to his house, allegedly to make up with him, hits him, and then shoots him, targeting an area that's going to be intensely painful, and then kills him after he starts to experience the pain. That's our sequence of events. And that website is still on Facebook, that page is still on Facebook, that group is still on Facebook. It still exists. It's still okay for women to claim ownership of men on the Are We Dating the Same Guy page. They're not gonna confirm, by the way, whether you're actually dating the guy you post there. I could just find any dating profile on any dating website, any dating app, and post it on there and say, don't date this guy, he's my boyfriend. And the women on that site would believe me. Right? They would just accept it at face value. You don't have to provide any evidence of your relationship. She didn't provide any evidence of her relationship. You don't have to provide any evidence of cheating. It's guilty by reason of allegation. How is that any less egregious than they were saying about Register Her, which was the website for registering known false accusers whose allegations had been either deemed invalid by the police, recanted by the accuser, or deemed false by the court. Like, I gotta wonder.
I posted a clip on my Twitter recently of someone on the London subway, some white guy who said some things to a group of 4 black guys. You couldn't really hear what was being said, but while he was saying this shit, one of those 4 black guys sucker punched him, and he fell over and lost consciousness. because of how hard the punch was. And before his body even hit the floor, there were some women on that tube train who, before his body even hit the floor, were going, yeah, that's what happens. You're a racist. That's what you get for being racist. And that's the most chilling thing about it. No, not the fact that a white man said something to a group of 4 black men that might have been racist. We don't know. We couldn't hear what he was saying. We have no idea what he was saying. But whatever the speech he was professing was met immediately with the sucker punch. And then he fell to the ground. And some women on that train were cheering on this violence enthusiastically before his body even hit the floor.
Yeah. That's actually consistent with the female attitude that it's acceptable to escalate perceived verbal abuse to physical violence if a man is the person engaging in the perceived verbal abuse.
Yeah, people are here saying, well, it's men who are responsible for violence. Well, it's a man getting violence exacted upon him by other men. So it doesn't matter that a man is the victim and that another man is the perpetrator. It's all men, isn't it? Meanwhile, there's women here going, yeah, that's what you get for racist. And no one's looking at that and going, maybe women have something to do with this. Maybe women are stoking this interracial violence in some way because they're biased in some way. That couldn't possibly be a thing that's going on, right? The interracial violence is a thing being stoked by women, because women have long since been at the top of that intersectional pyramid where they stoke violence between black men and white men and any other kind of men. They're sat here going, yeah, fucking beat the shit out of each other. Yeah, I'm wet. Before his body's even hit the floor. Like, at what point do we go, maybe women have something to do with this interracial violence between men?
Yeah,
and it's always the case, not just between women, but between men. Men of various races hate other men of various races, but they don't hate women of various races. They don't even hate women of various cultures. Men will be like, oh, fucking goth guys, fucking hate goth guys, fucking attention-seeking wankers, fucking wearing all this shit. Oh, but I fucking love goth girls. Oh, there's nothing I wouldn't give for a fucking big titty goth girl, but I can't stand these fucking goth guys. And it's the same in everything. They like hatred of men of any race or culture or anything is perfectly acceptable, but when you translate it to how you feel about the women of any given culture or race, they're fine with that. It's just the men they don't like.
That translates into history too, because if you look at the history of war between nations and war between tribes and so on, they kill all the men, and then the women of the losing culture just morph into part of the winning culture.
That's why we talk about this shit, folks. Because it all starts with misandry. It really does. Yep. If it didn't start with the misandry, it wouldn't develop to all of this shit that has become the main argument between races and cultures and shit. Like, we wouldn't have all of this xenophobia and oikophobia if it didn't start with how ready we are to hate men of any kind, to hate men of our own culture or men of other cultures. That's how it all starts. And we're here saying, well, don't do that, and people are fucking calling us misogynists and shit. Ugh.
Yeah, and it does this over and over again in various ways with various cultures, various groups of people, and in every individual situation. It's why I say there's no such thing as male violence. Like, we hear the phrase male violence from feminists all the time, but in truth, there is no type of violence that is unique to men as perpetrators, and no type of violence men engage in that isn't somehow connected to women's interests or men's interest in women. Whereas there are types of violence that are unique to women. And for instance, feticide is a almost uniquely female crime. False allegations used to get other people to attack and kill an individual. They don't do that on behalf of male accusers. They do that on behalf of female accusers. So proxy violence as a response to false allegations of sexual assault or intimate partner violence. It's a uniquely female thing, or at least almost uniquely female. But there isn't anything like that when you look at it, women don't do that, but men do. And feminists are going to be like, well, the 95% of perpetrators of rape are men. Only if you defined rape to exclude coitus being inflicted on a man by a woman, or a woman performing fellatio on a man against his will, right? If you exclude those two things, if you exclude two common sexual practices, one of which is used for reproductive sex, like and is the one type that was defined as rape if a man did it to a woman, then you can maybe say that. But when you include every way in which you would call it rape if it was done to a woman, no, 95% of perpetrators are not men.
I would any man listening to this, what if a woman pranked you, if a woman performed a practical joke on you, would you feel the need to at least give her a little punch to the abdomen or something in the event that she pranked you in that way? You wouldn't, because you don't do that. You're conditioned to do that. But if your man pranked you as a woman, would you feel the need to at least give him a light punch to any part of his body, or even if a man accidentally stepped on your toe, would you give him a light punch to some soft part of his body? You would. That's and I know this is a lower part of the example, but the idea that men are more prone to violence than women kind of really goes by the wayside. Like, if you prank your woman or whatever, or any woman who's close to you, she would immediately respond by lightly punching you in some soft part of your body, or even if you said something unappreciable. Even if you said something unappreciable about someone else, like maybe your neighbor or whatever, she would go, "Oh, for heaven's sake!"
Yeah, I was gonna say, for pranking, I've seen women slap the shit out of a guy to the point where he's shielding his face and his gut, and she's just slapping him over and over again around the arms and shoulders for a prank that she finds inappropriate. Can you imagine a man doing that to a woman?
Yeah, Yeah, and I realize that's that's a comparison that could be taken too far. But the idea that men are more prone to violence than women is really kind of thrown into controversy when the idea that a man can say something to a woman like, "Oh, I fucking hate that bitch, and I hate her kid as well," and the woman is quite likely to go, "Oh, psh," she'll she'll give a slight punch in the direction of that man's soft parts, and she feels it's fine.
Yep, poke him in the
But
ribs, slap him on the back of your hand, slap him in the chest, punch him in the arm, all kinds of things.
It would never work in the opposite direction. Like a man would not even apply that kind of violence, even on a slight level. He wouldn't even go. Psh,
well, heck, you can't tell her not to say that. Right? You try to silence her, even if she's making a fool of herself. You're the bad guy. Right? You're trying to control her.
Yeah. Women are quite accustomed to at least giving a short, sharp shock to her man in the event that he says something wrong, in a way a man would never do to his.
Yeah.
And I guess there's something evolutionary normal about it, because you can't really do any damage by giving a quick, sharp shock, like at least like giving some tiny short, sharp shock to his shoulder or whatever. Like, don't do that. But they always accompany their sort of "don't do that" message with a tiny little bit of violence, and it's not really violence. It doesn't really hurt, and so you're like, well, it's fine. So because it doesn't really hurt, but if when you allow that, it then leads to allowing a slightly more effective level of violence, and that's why women are like, they're fine with delivering that short, sharp shock, just to stop the men in their lives, or indeed their own children, from never saying that thing again, by delivering a short, sharp shock of violence. Men don't do that. Certainly not with regard to women. They were never considering going, "Don't do that again," to the women in their lives. And it seems like such a small thing, but when it's unchecked, it becomes the larger thing, and that's why women do that to the men in their lives, and even their sons, no matter how young they are. Do you know what I mean? Even when the toddlers in their lives do something they don't like, they go, "Psh, don't do that again," in a way that men never would. And like I say, it seems like such a small thing, but it's a form of violence, even the slightest form of violence that women are willing to do.
It's a sign of weakness, actually, when you think about it. You know, you look at a group of family, or a group of friends, where one individual is obviously the strongest, the alpha, the person with the personality and character and physical capabilities to back up what he's saying or doing, and it almost always is a male. That he won't have to do that to get people's attention. All he has to do is speak softly, and people hear him. They hear what he has to say, and out comes, hey, cut that out, and that's it. The behavior ends. Whereas, and this is, you see this a lot of times with dads and moms, right? When women have to get out the motorcycle when the child is misbehaving, no, 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 and the dad's like, cut that out, and the kid quits the behavior because the kid knows that if the dad says cut that out and they don't, that it's going to be backed up with action. The dad never has to have done that for the kid to understand that. You can sense that about a person from a very early age, Or the other one is the negation gun. No. I hate that at the grocery store. And here's the child opening some piece of merchandise, oh, look, I'm eating a Twinkie now in the middle of the grocery store aisle. Mommy hasn't paid for it yet. Chomp. And mom's like, no, not taking the box away from the child and putting it firmly back on the shelf and saying, you cannot do that. Like where you see dads, you cut that out, put that back. That's not yours. And they've given the child the information they need. They have established the boundary. The child may be angry and throw a fit or whatever, but it's more likely to happen with the mom than with the dad. And it is a difference between men and women. Women have to, they'll use hand signals and repetition, nagging, throwing their speech like that. And men are more matter of fact about things. So it is, to me, that's a sign of weakness, that you have to whack somebody with your hand or poke them in the ribs. Cut that out. When an alpha can just basically, a strong person can just basically say, don't do that, and that establishes the boundary.
Women apply minor violence even to their own children, and they think it's harmless because it's just minor violence. But when it comes to actually punishing the children, they go, wait until your dad gets home. and they're like, and they put it upon the man in their lives to apply actual violence. As and when it actually applies. Most sets of parents don't do that anymore because they are learning that violence is not necessarily the best way to teach their children not to do things they don't want, because that'll just teach them that they can apply violence whenever they don't. And I realize that's a controversial point, even at this point, and I'm not going to tell parents how to raise their children because I'm not a parent.
Well, as a parent, you're right, though. I mean, humor works way better, right? For instance, the pouting issue. You get kids that pout, and a lot of parents will be like, "You cut that out. If you keep pouting at me like that, I'm going to put you in a corner." Not my parents. I got told that if I stuck my lip out like that, big old Tom Turkey was going to come perch on it and poop. Not because they expected me to believe that, but because they knew that I would laugh at it, and that would get rid of the pouting. And I would associate that with at every future pout, and all my parents would then have to do was act like they were going to reference that, and the pouting would end. And it made me incapable of pouting. It totally destroyed the behavior without a single finger being lifted. You make your kids see the humor in a situation, or see a situation, associate a situation with humor. You take away the power of, petty, childish, sulking behavior, temper behavior. And it works very well. It works a lot better than forcibly confining the child or striking the child. Those things should be reserved for extreme situations where it's the only way to get the child's attention, or it's the only way to prevent the child from self-harming or harming another person. Right? That's it. Aside from that, it's not a useful form of punishment to enact violence on your child. It's not so much that it teaches them the wrong lesson. It doesn't teach them the right lesson. Like they don't learn to be accountable, and they don't learn to reset their mentality in a situation. They just learn, if I make my parents angry, they will hit me. So, and in this situation, it can also acclimate them to violence and set them up for future abuse by a partner like Christina Wang. So I think we've talked about everything we need to talk about in regard to the Wang story. I wanted to get across, there a couple of the things I wanted to get across here are obviously, this is a situation of domestic violence that the woman was entirely at fault, and she blamed the man for her bad behavior, right? If the genders were reversed, this would have been a much bigger story, and we would have been hearing about it as an example of male power and male abuse, and a man getting away with abusing a woman until he killed her, and the possessiveness aspect of it. Narcissistic women who get possessive like this over a guy, even when the relationship is over, that they're particularly dangerous. Sorry, I'm over here fidgeting and I just caught my foot on my cord, but they're particularly dangerous in that, because our society has this attitude that minor violence by women is okay, and that women are entitled to engage in violence because they're mad, they end up doing this thing of escalating violence in response to conflict between themselves and their partner. And when you're going to hear stories about women who have killed their partners, it's almost always going to be a story like this, where she's trying to control his behavior. She's angry that she thinks he's doing that which she's guilty of. She's projecting her adultery onto him, and so on. Or it'll be a story of she wants his resources, but she doesn't want him anymore, so she's trying to get him out of the way. There's almost never another another type of story involved where there's other conflicts or other things going on. Those are the two biggest reasons why women kill their partners, and this is a prime example of that. And it's also a prime example of how the feminist bad man narrative plays into that, where she put this picture on this Facebook page in this group for women who suspect their partners of cheating, even though he was no longer her partner, and seeking another partner isn't cheating because they're not in a relationship anymore. They're getting divorced. They're just in the process of legally severing what is already socially severed. So she was allowed to be possessive. She was allowed to claim ownership. Nobody questioned that. Nobody questioned the stalking aspect of that. Nobody questioned the abusive nature of claiming ownership of another human being and telling other people of your gender to stay away from them. And when she went to his house, she felt entitled to a reconciliation, and she shot him twice and killed him. We have some super chats. There is one that I'm not going to read, and I'm actually kind of pissed off about it. Not because I have an opinion on the opinions that were expressed. I'm not going to say I disagree with this, or I agree with this, or disagree with some of it and agree with some of it. I'm going to say this is completely unrelated to the topic of the show. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And it is something that if I say it, it can get us banned from more than one of the sites on which we are streaming right now. It is not going to change anything in the world for you to say it. And the only purpose of sending something like this through our system to get me to try to say it is to try to get us banned. None of us here at Honey Badger Radio are stupid. All right? We are here because we see problems in the world that need to be discussed in regards specifically to the rights and treatment of men in the world. Gender issues. Things that are racial, things that are religious, things that are socio-political, international warfare and so on, sexual violence issues and so on, are only pertinent to us insofar as they relate to men's rights, boys' rights, equal or unequal treatment under the law, how people are viewed in society, and how we see men being more acceptable targets of violence and less prevalent recipients of compassion in society. So when you put through something that is a description of your opinions regarding a conflict between two groups, and you say nothing about how it affects men, but you say several things that are directly against terms of service of the websites that we're on, I'm not going to read it. And it doesn't matter if you put it through for $5 or if you put it through for $500. It's not going to get read. So don't do that. It's not. And again, I'm not condemning what's said in this. And I'm not telling you that everything you said there is wrong. I'm also not condoning it, and I'm not telling you that everything that you said there is right. Right? I'm just telling you that I'm not going to read that. So, apologies to Anonymous, and also you have made me a little cranky, which is actually harder to do in a situation like this. I thank you for the $5. I'm not going to read your comment. And thank you for the second $5. It says, also subscribe to Ryan Dawson on Rumble. He covers geopolitical news, sometimes shits on feminism, woke retards, and anti-white racists. I don't know who he is. Personally, that's not what it says there. That's me saying that. So I neither endorse nor condemn this person because I know nothing about them. So this is just an endorsement from the individual who sent through something that I'm not going to read because, like I said, it can get us banned, and it isn't necessarily about. Here's my issue with this. All right, I will say that the one thing you're right about is men getting sent to war in outside of their own interest and outside of the interests that they would sign on for. And in that vein, I will say this. There should be no selective service. There should be no draft. But if there's going to be, it should be genderless. And that's as much as I will give you. It doesn't matter who is abusing that power. It matters that that power exists and can be abused. And that's the wrongdoing right there. And no group would be able to abuse that power if it didn't exist and couldn't be abused. Albert Ader Retro gave us a $5 super chat, $5 Canadian, and said, because register her is sexist, Hannah, the other way is just different. Get with the program, lady. Sheesh. And yeah, we got told that, actually. Register her was a response to similar databases of, not Are We Dating the Same Guy, because that didn't exist back then, but there were other, there was, Shit Reddit Says was compiling lists of MRAs. I was on that list. In fact, when I started Twitter, somebody had used the Shit Reddit Says shit list of MRAs as a block list, and when I used the same @ name on Twitter as my Reddit handle, it was already on that block list, so I was already insta-blocked, auto-blocked by everybody that used that block list, that shared block list on Twitter, and that was in, I want to say 2009.
For being strong and independent.
Yes, yes. So yeah, it's sexist. It's sexist to keep track of what women are doing, but not to keep track of what women are doing that advocate for men, right? Or to keep track of what men are doing. Albert Nader Retro gave us another $5 Canadian and said, what would have happened if Chris Evans had reacted to Haley Atwell's unscripted peck grab the same way she'd have reacted to an unscripted boob grab? I don't know. I don't know what that's from. Is that
in the first Captain America movie? The lady who was cast in the role of the lady who was tasked with reacting to the moment when the guy who was Captain America, he was originally skinny, and then the serum made him
bulk up,
buff.
I see.
There was some lady who was tasked to act in reactance. Is reactance a word? Whatever. But in her acting in reactance to him becoming buff.
So it's not in the midst of an affectionate moment where they're like engaging in petting and that kind of thing. No, it's just
the actress couldn't quite help but touch his pecs.
Oh, good grief!
And so she touched his pecs, and they kept it in the movie. That's all.
See, I honestly, I've talked about this before. Women will touch men's chest, and then and act like it's nothing. And some guys will say, well, it's not the same because we don't have boobs, right? And I will say to you, if the nipples are an erogenous zone, it's the same. And in some guys, they are. And a woman might not necessarily be able to predict which ones. And also, I think we look a lot at men's pecs in a similar manner to the way men look at boobs, or at least women who look at both boobs and pecs. We look at both in a similar manner. It's pretty parallel. It's not. I won't say it's exactly the same, but both of them are similarly attractive, and I don't think that I would just reach out and touch a guy on the chest, especially in a moment of surprised attraction. Like, just without any context and without any prior relationship like that. Where, like, I will touch my husband's chest just like he touches my boobs, because we're married and that's one of the things we do together. But if I was a old maid at this point, and some guy walked up to me shirtless, I wouldn't be like, "Ooh, pecs," and grab. That would be rude as hell. But a lot of women do.
Needless to say, if some male actor had grabbed Scarlett Johansson's boobs,
oh yeah, that would have been
in the event that she developed her superpowers. Oh wait, her character didn't have any superpowers. Never the fucking mind.
It would have been a moment though. Feminists would have made a big deal out of it. We also have $2 Canadian from Albert Nader Retro. It says, "See MCU Captain America regarding unscripted grab." And then we have on Rumble, Nova Fan gave us $2 when we were talking about the video of the women who cheered on the black guys that beat up the guy that sucker punched the guy in the gut for something that nobody knows what he said. He gave us $2 and said, "Devil Artemis Kermit." I don't know that reference. Sorry. Devil Artemis Kermit. Do it, pussy, no balls! Yeah, that's pretty common among women, unfortunately. They will push a guy to violence, and they'll celebrate that violence out of the context of how it happened, because it's happening to a man.
Women love it when men beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
But women, war has nothing to do with women. Trust.
Right. Nova fan gave us it didn't give us a super chat, but gave us a little bit of context. Actually, the context was the guy with the gun. Okay, so that was that's coming through on okay, so that was typed into YouTube. That's why. I was gonna say that's coming through on a restream, which Rumble doesn't, but I see the YouTube icon. And then let's see, Night Motorcyclist also pointed something out that I think we should mention in regard to the idea of the pecs. He says, hell, the guy that played Gaston at Disneyland got backlash when a woman grabbed him. And yeah, I remember that. And it wasn't just some people. Most people shamed him and blamed him. And here's the situation, right? He is a buff guy who is playing a Disney character who is supposed to be a big, strong guy who's kind of a dick. Which he isn't really. He's trying to, a big part of his character is that he cares about this woman, has a crush on this woman, whatever you want to say. He's a little arrogant about it. But when he thinks that she's in trouble, he goes to rescue her. When he thinks that there's a monster that has held her captive, he goes to get rid of the monster. And he's not doing it as a jealous man at that moment. He's doing that as a man who is protecting the people of his community, and in particular a woman he has feelings for, even if she disagrees with him on that. So I don't like calling him a villain, but he's a big, strong guy, so he's going to be played by somebody like a bodybuilder, or somebody with at least a degree of bodybuilding appearance. And some chick groped him. The guy at Disney that played Gaston during at least one shift, she groped him, and he called security and did exactly what they're supposed to do according to policy in response to that kind of misconduct by a park visitor. And that is misconduct. Groping somebody is misconduct. It doesn't mean only men who grope people are engaging in misconduct. A woman who engages in groping is engaging in misconduct. That is misconduct. And so she was ejected, if I remember right, from the park because she groped him. And she argued with him about it, too. That's the other thing. She didn't just grope him and then when he protested say, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you would be into it, or something like that. She argued with him. And people acted like he went overboard and was the bad guy, when in fact a woman with boundary issues groped him and then argued with him against his boundaries as if he was wrong for enforcing them.
The same goes with the Queen's Guards.
Yeah.
The guys with the enormous bearskin hats. Those guys will walk through a child if the child happens to be stood in the wrong place. If a woman gropes them, they'll point their fucking gun at you and say, "Fuck you, we're guarding the Queen. We are charged with guarding the Queen. If you so much as touch us, we will ruin your ass." That's one of the last as one of the last things that the British will do to actually fuck you up with guns, if you even fuck with us. Another super chat from Abed Retro. Men's torsos erotic. Here I thought women watching Magic Mike for the compelling story. I'm so disappointed.
No, we all
that's-
watched it. We all watched it for the compelling story. It's totally for the compelling story, right? Not. Actually, I say this as somebody who has not even seen the whole movie. But like I've seen scenes from it, but it's definitely a movie that exists strictly so that women can ogle well-built men.
It's not a
Allison-
very cerebral movie.
I wouldn't
Al-
expect,
Allison-
no.
Allison and I sat through that entire movie, and I wish we didn't.
I don't know the
It was-
storyline. I just know it's about male
Neither
strippers.
do I.
So like that's all, you know. What's funny is women like to act like that's just a male behavior, going to the strip club and everything. But women will go to see male strippers and they will go to see female strippers. I'm assuming it had a plot. I'm giving it credit for having a plot. That maybe I shouldn't be, because like I said, I don't know. I haven't seen it. Not the whole thing anyway. But and my interest in it is not abnormal per se, but part of my interest in it was because it has Fluffy in it, and he's one of my favorite comedians, and talked about it in one of his interviews or one of his sketches, and then I'm like, oh well, now I want to see it, because like if to be honest, if I want to see men's torsos, you can find that online. You don't need a story plot for that. You just go looking for it. But in any case, yeah, definitely, people don't recognize the behavior the same way when women do it as when men do it. And I will say this in terms of not just the torso thing, the you know, that yeah, men's chests are sexy. You should see how women behave around a man in a kilt. Especially in countries where it has not historically been the norm. Yes, Fluffy, Gabriel Iglesias, yes. Where it has traditionally not been the norm for guys to wear kilts. When women see a guy in a kilt, especially a guy with good legs, right? That exposes the complete and utter depravity of female nature. I've seen women walk up to a guy and reach under the kilt and grab without asking. You know, are you a true Scotsman? Let me check. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You are reaching for another human being's genitalia without permission. You know,
And
like,
they would never do that with male drag queens. How weird is that?
No,
Hey?
only Crocodile Dundee is allowed to do that. Oh, that scene would not go well today. Senior Sticks gave us $2 and said, "How are the New Year's resolutions holding up?"
My New Year's resolution.
1080p.
My New Year's resolution is New Year's resolutions, and I'm giving up Lent for Lent.
That's
Make of that
my
what you will.
joke. Actually, I always say, when people ask me what I'm giving up for Lent, I say dryer sheets. Albernator Retro gave us $2 Canadian and said, "Hannah finished and turned the DVD off." I don't think I've watched a DVD in years. Everything's online.
Yeah.
But yeah. New Year's resolutions. I don't do New Year's resolutions. I used to sometimes start new things, new projects at New Year's, but mostly I don't. It's just
not.
yeah.
Fuck it.
It's all bollocks anyway.
Yeah, I've learned my lessons from all the times I've tried and failed to keep a resolution. It's just not going to happen.
New Year's is one of 2 nights where I have a particular attitude about leaving the house. If I leave the house, it's for someplace real close in my neighborhood. I don't get excited about it so much as if somebody wants to spend time with me and my husband, then I'll go and socialize. So that's it, though. The other one is Black Friday.
Never.
Yeah, if I'm not at work, I'm at home. I won't go shopping. I won't leave the house because I hate Black Friday traffic. I hate the Black Friday shopping crowds. I hated working in retail on Black Friday, and I don't want anything to do with it. And New Year's, I don't like driving on New Year's, and I don't like dealing with. I don't go places where there's parties and stuff because I don't like crowds. So that's it. I went to a movie night at a friend's house this year on New Year's, and we watched stuff and chit chatted, and we do the Mystery Science Theater 2000 version of watching movies at movie night. At this friend's house, like at the whole movie, we're all talking over the movie about the movie the whole time, and it's all making fun of the movie. So there you go. Like I don't even drink on New Year's. Of course, I don't really drink anymore anyway. But
if you want,
it's not a special day for me.
If you want to make a change in your life, it should be for your own sake, because some numbers have changed, not because the first digit of those numbers happened to have arbitrarily changed.
Yeah.
It's because you want to make a change for once in my life. Gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right.
The only difference is, in my case, the man in the mirror is usually standing behind me going, "You look nice," which, I don't know if I always agree with him or not, but I'll take it. It's you get rose-colored glasses on your wedding day. But yeah. No, when you're going to make a change, you decide what you're going to do, and then you do it. And you might go through a process. Like, I've mentioned the quitting drinking thing. My process was started actually in 2019 because I had the suspicion that I was developing symptoms of gout-related alcohol, which would take all of the fun out of drinking. Because if it hurts, it's not fun anymore, right? So when I went to ICMI, I was not drinking. And I figured I would just not drink anything alcoholic for a few months, and then have maybe 2 beers in the same night, which is a lot for me, and compare. And that year, I had no problem. So I thought, okay, well, this isn't a problem. I can just be the same rare social drinker that I always was. And about 2021. I had another incident where I'd had a beer, and the next day it felt like somebody beat me up with a baseball bat. And I'm just like, what the fuck? That's the only change. So I again, cut off all alcohol for a while, had another beer, and boom. Again, somebody came in the middle of the night. The beat up fairy came in the middle of the night and attacked both of my hips. So I'm like, all right, well that is goutish symptoms. That's liver, or that's kidneys. That's something. Don't want to have it identified, but obviously alcohol is not my friend anymore, and we're just gonna have to part ways. And so ever since then, I don't drink because it's not fun anymore, and it's not something that you do. Like, oh, I'm gonna change the way I'm doing things, and I'm gonna start on this day, and it's gonna be really hard, and I'm gonna make this change, and I have a 12-step plan and blah blah. No, I got rid of alcohol, and I didn't buy any more, and I'm done. Like the same thing with diet. You're like, oh well, carbs are not my friend anymore. They do the same thing. They pack themselves on my ass, so I don't buy as many things that are high carb and buy more things that are low carb and a lot more vegetables, and just changed my habit. Right? That's it. You don't need New Year's Day. You don't need a birthday. You don't need this or that. You just do it. But I don't know.
I used to take all the drugs you could possibly, and I stopped taking them 2 years because when you get the message, you hang up the phone. It's as simple as that.
Yep, if it hurts, it's not fun anymore, so, basically that's it. But, that's my lecture on crutches, right? You don't need somebody to decide for you, and you don't need that kind of crutch. Just, you're going to make a change, you just change. You change your habit. And remember your reasons, which are far more important than anything else with regard to the change of habit. I know if I pick up a beer and drink it, that the next day I'm going to feel 30 years older just around the hips. So I might as well not bother, even if it tastes good. Other things taste good too. Xeranx gave us $5 and said, my thinking on New Year's resolutions, start them 2 weeks before January 1st at the latest. Best 3 to 4 weeks or more before New Year's. Yeah, if you're going to schedule a change, I suppose feeling it out a little early is not going to hurt anything, but I would still go with it. You don't have to schedule it and say, this is when I'm going to do it. Just do it. So, but that's it. And in terms of, how that kind of relates to the story at hand, if you break things off with somebody and they seem to have boundary issues about it, where they're constantly trying to draw you back into the relationship, and you feel that the relationship is over and you're not coming back, don't let them drag it out. Right? And it's not just a matter of self-defense and stuff like that. It's an aspect of self-torture, and also it's mean. Right? If you let somebody think that there might be a remote chance of getting back together when there is not, you're hurting them too. Not that justifies in any way them hurting you back, but it's better to just cut ties. And obviously, if you have a kid together, you have to be able to have communications and everything, but it should be something where, there's a clear boundary now. You are partners in parenting, not romantic partners. And I probably wouldn't have prevented anything in this situation directly, but it might have helped the guy spot red flags toward her violence maybe a little earlier, and it would have at least given him a slight chance of protecting himself against that violence by either not being available for it or by alerting authorities, by not letting her in, whatever. But Master Rogue gave us $2 and said, your man in the mirror is right, Hannah. You're a sweetheart, and I'll take that too. Thank you. But with that, I think we have said everything that we're going to say about the issue. So thanks everybody for listening to The Long Sausage. My co-host, do you guys have anything else to say?
No, good night.
All right. Thanks to my two co-hosts for this. This was kind of a yucky sausage. I hate stories like this because it's heartbreaking when somebody is killed in a situation like this. It's sad when relationships break up, but it's just gut-wrenching when somebody commits a murder like this. But
and
thanks.
The only way this could have had a happy ending would have been if she would have just turned around and emptied it on herself. And it still would have left this child without parents. And it's just horrible all the way around. But.
Exactly. So thanks guys for sticking out this particular sausage with me. And thanks to everybody who works in the background to help make HBR Talk happen. Good night, all.
machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.